welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I have the pleasure and honor of being joined by not just a wonderful artist and creative, but a close personal friend for over 10 years now, I would say, which is I hate when things happened 10 years ago and I was already an adult in my 30s. It's not fun, but it's fun to have a friend for that long. So anyway, welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and the book that you're here to discuss today?
Hello, my name is Carl Antonowicz. I'm a cartoonist and noise guy and promotional booker out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The book I'm here to talk about is my new graphic novel, The Ardent, which came out through Field Mouse Press in May of 2025. Oklahoma bestseller, baby. I don't know. It's a medieval road narrative, sort of, that uses a frame narrative about this monk sworn to silence transporting a jeweled skeleton to what do you call it, like a different monastery on the coast, and the people he meets along the way.
You and I have a shared love of the medieval, and so I
Very
was
true.
particularly looking forward to reading this. And I had loved your previous work, The Pestle, and I loved this one just as much. But before we get too much into The Ardent, could you just tell us a little bit about how you arrived there? How did you get into comics, and what are some of your other works?
So I get into comics. I don't know. My uncle, when I was like around 5, tossed a couple of Spider-Man comics at me. Said, "Don't tell you I never gave you nothing," and that like started this this lifelong disability where I'm telling picture stories with sad little guys in little boxes. After I finished my undergrad, I went and got my master's degree at the Center for Cartoon Studies in beautiful White River Junction, Vermont, which is where I met my wife, Sophie. And I started doing medieval comics, I want to say around 2014. So this has been about 10 years that I have been sort of working more or less in this vein. And I got there because of a book called Flesh in the Age of Reason by Roy Porter, in which, if none of y'all out there listening have read any of Roy Porter's work and you're interested in intellectual history, he's really top of the pops. Flesh in the Age of Reason is specifically about the Scottish Enlightenment. So we're looking like 1700s, somewhere in that general vicinity, and like the Resurrection Men and all those kind of cats. But he mentioned a couple of sort of pre-modern modes of thought. And so that led me down a different rabbit hole. And it's been all holes the entire time. The first long piece that I did that was set in this setting, it's the first Rudelands narrative, and Rudelands is the setting in which the Ardent, Term Ring, and Boyar's Kiss, and the Pestle, which is the one that Jen just mentioned. It's a shared setting, but they're not like really connected in any way. There's like some historical events that happen, but you don't have to read them in any particular order. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so I've been working in that vein for a time now. Again, 11 years. Holy shit. And I started doing the Pestle around 2014. I collected that together into a different thing. In 2018, I've always been kind of a performer. Those of you listening out there in TV land can probably tell that there's a fair amount of inflection that goes on in my voice, and this is just how I talk. So that comes from a theater background and comes from just being a big personality, I suppose. And so in 2018, I wrote a grant to do a stage show that was also a comic. And that was the origin of Boyar's Kiss, which is the second big book in the Rudelands world. And that went off really well. That was out in Pittsburgh. Then I did Term Ring during I stopped doing Term Ring in order to do Boyar's Kiss, and I picked it back up again during the pandemic and redrew all of it. Which is stupid. I don't recommend doing that. And then I was also writing The Ardent at the same time. I worked on The Ardent from like 2021 through 3. And yeah, like managed to find a home for it really quickly with Field Mouse, which was delightful. And that's also a stage show. Yeah, that I did The Ardent as as a one-man show at the Small Press Expo in September of 2023 as well. And I don't know, a big tour with that is not in the cards right now, just economically speaking, but it is something that I'd like to do at some point.
Mm.
So all you listeners out there who have theater connects, who do have the ability to book shows and maybe put a brother up for a day or two while while we perform for you, I'm easy to find.
I hope somebody's out there who can like make that happen because I'm dying to see this hybrid performance. And I am actually that is my next question about the inception point for the Ardent and what it was then like to adapt it from this like multi-sensory live experience to a book.
They were both sort of happening at the same time. So I learned a lot from doing Boris Kiss, which is again also that's also like a square bound comic. With Boris Kiss, I was designing the pages first and then sort of thinking about the stage almost as an afterthought because like it's hard to keep both of those things in your head at the same time. So Boris Kiss is like it's like a 12 panel grid on each page. So like each page has a maximum of 12 panels. I do sort of fuse them and shift them around a little bit, but most of the time it's around 9 to 12 panels. And that's great because you have a lot of images, but it's also a tremendous strain on the wrist. And if you're trying to like do that and then have that be a have the page not be the end point. You get what I mean? Like this was with the Ardent or with both the Ardent and with Brace Kiss and with all the performances that I do. I will draw the page first and I'll take it into Photoshop and I'll cut it up into individual panels and those will be sort of sequenced in I was using a software called QLab for a minute, but QLab doesn't have the Mac I was using died, and I switched over to PC, and QLab doesn't have PC compatibility as of this writing, which sucks, but it's fine, whatever. But QLab is really good for doing that kind of thing. So I've been using slides and to like on the Arden specifically, I was using Keynote on my wife's iPad, which I don't know, both work. It's tremendously frustrating. Google Slides in particular has a lot of problems. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here. So with the Ardent, I took the lessons that I had learned from Blair's Kiss, which like I had a lot of funding for Blair's Kiss. I had a lot of like professionals who know their way around a stage and know their way around the technology. I had them working with me, but with the Ardent, because it wasn't like funded in any way, I didn't really have anybody. I just had like what I remembered from working on Blair's Kiss like 6 years prior. So I don't know, like I did it the way that I just said, where I like drew the page first and I cut it up and then I put it into Keynote. With Blair's Kiss, we had somebody. It was myself and two other voice actors, plus a lighting guy, a sound technician, and somebody to advance the slides and basically call cues. I didn't have any of that with the Ardent. It was me. That's it. So like I was queuing recorded sound effects and doing live Foley effects. My wife Sophie had originally planned to come and cue the slides with me, but in order to save our marriage, we decided not to do that because I'm very exacting about this sort of thing, and I like no, it's got to be zero point 0.3 seconds. If it's not 0.3 seconds, it lags too much, and I need you to go back and hit that cue again. And so mostly because I can be a jerk about this kind of thing. What ended up happening is that I just automated all of the slides to like the exacting tenth of a second and sometimes hundredth of a second amount of time that I needed. And so that part was all automated. I just had somebody in the audience hit play on the iPad and just like it went forward.
Oh, so you had to match the timing of the timing of the slideshow then in your live performance.
Yeah. So it's like playing to a click track if you've played music before. So it just has like it's a click track, but it's not regular. Um, it's just like it's a matter of rehearsing it until you get it down. And that's it's a lot of work. These performances are an awful lot of work, but they're worth it. And the way that I have laid out the slides in a lot of these sort of forces the viewer, the audience, to like bounce back and forth between what I'm doing because like I'll be doing voice acting, I'll be doing what do you call it, live Foley effects and all that kind of stuff, and also like moving my body around a little bit. And then the panels themselves on the slides are also not in one fixed place. So they'll be sort of moving to one side or the other. Um, and then sort of commenting on the action by changing the direction in which they appear. I don't know if that quite makes sense, but uh, you'll see it. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. Um, I don't know if that answered your question or not. I'm sorry.
It does. I'm sorry. I was just making a note, but I will, I'll cut that weird little lag.
That's
Um,
okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that, yeah, that performance mode and how it sort of like is at once very like feels very modern, but also
Hmm.
is like very authentically medieval in its own way, because like all storytelling, except for like the very, very minor population that was literate, would have experienced storytelling as oral.
Hmm.
And so it feels like very natural medieval storytelling in that one way. But then you
Hmm.
have the music and all the other aspects sort of layering on top of that. It's really neat. I had taken like a medieval storytelling class in college because that's the sort of thing you do when you go to like a
Like when you do your doctorate in medieval studies, yeah.
yeah. And so it felt like it was inspired both by like the medieval narratives that you're drawing on and by like just the tradition of like, radio storytelling, in the mid-century.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I a lot of the very particular peccadillos that I have in this aspect of my practice come from having seen a lot of comics readings. Like a lot of comics when they're performed, the artist won't take the lettering off.
mm.
Does that make sense? Like a lot of the time you'll see a page of comics and people will draw the lettering directly on there. And like with a performance thing, I can read faster than most people speak. And I think this is true of a lot of readers. I have found that like you'll be able to get through a text like a prose version of a book faster than you'll be able to get through an audio version of a book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like if there are jokes on the page, and I try to tell a lot of jokes in these things. I don't know if they're all funny to anybody aside from me. I I think a lot of these books are really hilarious, but they do come off very cynical, which fair. But the so like with uh, yeah, so I like dropping the text off of there, just because like yeah, I don't want the reader to get ahead. I want them to be following along with me, but then also sort of be have their experience be complicated by the memory of the previous panel on the screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and like not have it step on your comic timing of your performance, right?
Just so, just so. Yeah, so all of that is there's a few concerns that go along with that, and I think they're valid. And like the connection to like passion plays and mystery plays and that kind of thing. Like I've read a number of those in my independent studies, and they all seem very, very dramatic and very like big. Like the emotions on display are huge, but also they're not personal. They're like they're writing to type
Yeah.
in a way. I think like we have this sort of rise of the individual with the Enlightenment, and that continues on into the present day until until we get to a point where our individuality is leading us back into corporate serfdom. But that's neither here nor there. All of which is to say that there is like yeah, there's not a connection to that, and I think because images themselves are so primal. There's like a primacy to the way that we perceive images, and like I don't know if this happens for you, Jen, when you're reading, or much less any of you out there in Radioland. But I tend to envision like staging and blocking and that kind of thing when I'm reading text, or like okay, like fiction most specifically. But if there's like a creative nonfiction type thing that I'm reading and it has a scene that is dramatized, then yeah, I'm going to envision the way that's happening and the way that's framed and the way that the motion is happening, which I guess is as much film as it is play. I don't know if that answered your question or not. I'm sorry.
It does. It totally answers my question. And it
Okay.
provides a very good segue into, I think, the subject matter of the ardent, which is what I would love to talk about next. Um, so you were just talking about the importance and sort of like primal nature of images. And I think
Hmm.
that's important to this story itself. There's a religion depicted in the ardent, like one, in our world.
It's very similar,
Yeah.
but a little different,
Little
slightly
different.
more Gnostic.
And I think a big part of what you are concerned with in the Ardent is how that organized religion uses images and stories in order to not only spread itself, but to maintain power and perhaps influence. So let's talk a little bit about the Ardent. Could you tell us a little bit about perhaps setting the scene? Where does our story begin? And why you chose perhaps, or what interested you in telling a story about relics and specifically the translation of relics?
All right. So there, so the Ardennes is set in the fictionalized medieval Europe, the Rude Lands. I don't like have a map or anything like that. Things roughly correspond to the present day, like 21st century borders of nations. There's areas that are like Spain. This is meant the Ardennes is meant to take place in both England and like the Low Countries, so like Swabia and like Austria. All of the landscape from this and a lot of the art that I'm referencing in this are pulled from more Slavic sources, though. Like the area that I was thinking most about was Silesia, which is an area in sort of northeastern Poland. And that's sort of where my dad's side of my family comes from. We don't know this for sure. It might be, there's a lot of like us not being sure where we came from. And so I picked that because I didn't know, I'm probably never going to get over there. So I sort of wanted to reference those specific things as like a way of personalizing this narrative to myself. Relics are fascinating. I'm not a religious person. I don't really think of myself as being spiritual. I don't really think of. I'm usually just busy trying to put trying to put ink on paper and bread on the table, and then also concerning myself with like the present. Um, but the I find the idea that there are these artifacts that contain aspects or contain the essence of the person to whom they're related, and then also that these things are literally a part of the person to whom they're related. I find that to be really, really fascinating. I've done a couple of other stories about artifacts of one kind or another, and it's one that I've had on the back burner for a long time about religious cannibalism that I don't know if I'm ever going to make this one, but whatever. But the idea that you can sort of contain a person's spirit after their departure in an object, and that object becomes an object of worship, really, really fascinating. Um, so I found out about these catacomb saints, the catacomb heilige, that are sort of made and not made. They were they're these big jeweled skeletons, like jeweled human skeletons that were excavated from a particular crypt in Rome in the during the Counter Reformation, and then sort of transported north to Low Countries where Luther et al. Were sort of challenging the authority of the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church was like, well, maybe we should give them some more jewels to look at and put them on some bones. So there's like 13 or 14 of these guys. The one that I am specifically referencing in the Ardent is Saint Munditia. Um, Saint Munditia, I don't know how she was actually martyred, and the relationship between any of these catacomb saints, the actual bones and the actual saint, from whom they are to whom they are nominally related, it's pretty. It's a little thin. There's a couple of Saint Patricks in there, but I don't think any of those guys are the actual Saint Patrick.
No.
Um, but also that's immaterial because they're objects of worship, and like because of their adoration and because of their decoration, they have become a separate thing that is separate from separate to historical, again, air quotes, historical truth. Yeah, so those. And then I was also reading about Henry VIII and the dissolution of monasteries in England, and so like that got sort of rolled in there. There's a oh, and then there's a section with this kid Goswin. And the structure of the art is that there's like Odulf, who's the monk sworn to silence, meets all these people. They spill their guts to him, and uh, when they're telling their stories, we get a flashback that's sort of in a different style. And then Goswin's is based on some of the earliest children's drawings that we have a possession of. These are the work of Anfim of Novgorod, who was a like a kid in like in a monastic school who just like really didn't like doing homework. But we found his homework, like his like he's doing an Amo Masamat, but in like Cyrillic, and like doing a drawing of himself on horseback, killing something with a spear. It's so they're so great. They're so great. Yeah, so all these things sort of get tossed into the slow cooker, and they just sort of sit there for however long it takes me to figure out what the book is going to look like. When I first started this book, I thought it was going to be about the Spanish Inquisition. It's not. Not even remotely. That story is like somewhere else now. I think I still have the notebook in which I was working on that one, but this idea presented itself to me, and it was much more interesting to work on than the sort of like um, procedural, I suppose, kind of thing that I was planning on the Inquisition thing being.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. So like all of that stuff just gets sort of boiled together, and they yeah, just it ends up like sort of accruing a narrative around it. So like I start with these concepts, and those sort of those inform the story that I'm telling. I have because I've been doing this for long enough. I know what my interests are and like the kind of stories I like telling. They're bummers. And the like as a result, I'm like, all right, how can I make this miserable? Um, and as a result, the story just sort of like accrues around whatever these things are. My editor on this, Rob Clow, uh, was like, this is an incredibly nihilistic story, and you are very critical of authority. And it's like, I am not. No way. And then I went back and thought about it some more, and I was like, ah, Rob,
Yep.
he got me. He
Yeah.
got me. And like it was just not a thing. Like there are one of the great things about working with an editor is that they will point out things to you that you don't notice. It's one of the most important things you can do to work with other people, like let other people read your stuff and sort of point out people whose opinions you respect, but who do not necessarily need you to feel good about them
Yes.
because you have a measure of trust. Um, and yeah, like the fact that Rob was able to point that stuff out to me and like, it just totally blindsided me, and that
No, that's so interesting. I really like the way that you talked about sort of the way that you accrued all these um examples of medieval art objects, whether it is like a jewel encrusted, skeleton of a saint, or a sort of tossed off children's sketch like on the side of their homework. That's all sort of all art, baby. And
Mhm.
the way that you structure the story around these like individual stories that built around these objects also gives it sort of like the feel of you know, like what medieval narratives felt like, which were very episodic because they were usually about
Mhm.
people traveling. It mirrors like the structure of like, Gawain and the Green Knight, or what many people call like the most authentic medieval movie ever, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, So, yeah, like it felt very authentic to the sort like the legacy of medieval storytelling, not just in its content, but in its structure too.
Yeah, that was the thing that I was thinking about as well. Like I had found myself, and maybe other writers don't have this, but I find myself telling a lot of the same jokes, and then like I'll catch myself telling the same jokes over and over again. The pull quote on the back of the book from Claire Napier, who's a great cartoonist in her own right. Big rec on her. Wolfheart, I think is what it's called, is the joke is always the same, but that's what makes it funny. And like again, she got me too. But the yeah, so I found myself telling a lot of the same jokes and telling returning to the same themes and that kind of thing. But I was thinking, so I had both in Boyer's Kiss and in I think to some extent in the Pestle, although I don't rightly remember this, it's been 10 years. There are flashbacks that are sort of told in sort of faux tapestry style. And I love doing that. I love doing that sort of style switching. I may not be like the most adept at it, and I'm also not referencing anything super heavily when I'm doing it, but like, drawing something in this very stiff and mannered style as opposed to the stiff and mannered style with which I draw everything else is a it's a fun challenge, and it also is a great way to build a visual identity for each separate narrative that's going on in there. And I was thinking about the Canterbury Tales, and in particular The Miller's Tale, which is I don't know. I'll go to the bat for the Miller's Tale. I know that there's like other tales that people may like better. Like a Wife of Bath's Tale is really good, but the Miller's Tale contains like the first fart
Yeah.
ever recorded in English literature, and
Smart joke.
it's earned it a place in my heart. Um, so I was thinking about those things and like how like raucous and rollicking they are, and I know that like maybe the ardent isn't quite as raucous or rollicking as those things, but I'm also not Geoffrey Chaucer, so but like how they're very goofy and like I think who is it? It's the Reeves Tale, which is just like the most bitter and bitter and awful of all of the Canterbury tales, and like nobody likes this guy, and they keep being like, are you done? Can we can we move on from this? Yeah, so I was thinking about all the Canterbury tales, and I guess to a lesser extent like Don Quixote, but like yeah, all of this these sort of picaresque episodic narratives are really interesting, and I think they are a great way to sort of fit um, multiple perspectives into a tale while retaining a singular viewpoint. Because like when you're seeing these things in the Ardent, for example, like Odolf isn't commenting on this, but you can tell that he's sort of imagining the things that are happening, and like the style switching that I did with the art um, is different for each character. Like there's one character where everything is just basically in kind of an amber hue. There's another character, Goswin, who is like those stick figures on like a green backdrop, big green backdrop. There's a final character, Brigid, who is in sort of like a reddish hue, and the rest of the book is in blue, like a very intense cerulean. Um, and so yeah, like the doing a color story with them, and then also having the style switch was, I don't know, it just sort of fell into place, like you start shaking these things together, and eventually like the puzzle assembles itself.
Yeah, it's so lovely. And I think it not only marks the sort of the leaps through time or through from story to story, but it tells you something, I think, also about like the storyteller often, which is
Mhm.
very nice as well. It's just such a beautiful book, even if it is like a touch nihilistic. I think it does a good job of
It's
um
very generous, thank you.
it's a beautiful job of I think depicting both like the Middle Ages and medieval history and medieval storytelling, because sometimes those are very
Mm.
different things.
Oh,
Are
for
you
sure.
working on anything else medieval? Are you gonna keep on keeping on
I
with
got a Yeah, I got a couple more of these in me. There's one called Tendrils of the Divine, which I've been writing around 100, pages into the script. I'm going to be releasing this as like floppy chapters first. With the Ardent, I did a little mini comic that was the first 20 pages or so, and then that was it. I was like, all right, this is all you get. And I was posting all of it on my Patreon. With Tendrils, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get through the first chapter, and I'll probably do a large run of those in print too. And this one is about a particular kind of Iberian faith healer from the 15th century called a Salulador, who are like very related to like Celtic cunning men, and there's a variety of other sort of iterations of this mytho complex that happen in and around the Mediterranean and further north. Seventh sons of seventh sons, they're kind of anti-witches. They have the ability to cure rabies with their kiss. Where witches' power rests in the eye, their power rests in their mouth. Oh man, I'm still so hype about this idea. And I'm making it a point that I have something like gross and supernatural to draw every chapter. Um, so there's not a whole lot of supernatural stuff that goes on in the Ardent. Like it's a pretty down to earth story, um, mostly. But the with this one, I'm giving myself permission to do effects shots, and like it doesn't cost anything extra to have a weird guy.
Nope.
It's comics. I
But
could put
have
a
to
bunch of
like
weird guys in there.
force a non-union actor to sit in a chair for 12 hours while you put intense makeup on him. Like that's silly.
Exactly.
You do
I don't
whatever
have to do
you
that. I don't have to do
want.
that. This guy always looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like there's gonna be some weird guys, which I'm looking forward to drawing. I'm around 10 pages of pencils, I want to say, in the first chapter of that. I'm also working on illustrating like a novelette. I really hate that term, but it's like a 9,000 word short story. So on the lower end of a novelette, but my idea is to sort of turn it into a square bound, heavily illustrated book. So there'll be like a page of text and then a page of illustrations. They'll be facing each other and occasional spot illustrations on there. And this one's about cyborg pirates, which is not medieval, but sort of like imagine Tetsuo the Iron Man meets Master and Commander. That's my elevator pitch.
Oh my goodness. That's incredibly exciting. Oh my gosh.
I'm really stoked on it. That's probably going to be the thing that I work on first.
Nice. Well, yeah, Godspeed on all of your projects. And, I hope that, you consider coming back when, no rush, like take your time. I don't want you to hurt your wrist or anything. But when you are ready, our door's always open to you. It was so nice to actually talk to a friend on this show and to feature, talk about just being friends, making comics, man. It's life.
Yeah. It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jenn, dear listener, has plugged her amazing graphic novels with my wife Sophie Goldstein, In Embarrassment of Witches and Darwin Carmichael is Going to Hell. They're both wonderful. Embarrassment of Witches is available wherever finer books are sold, and Darwin Carmichael is Going to Hell is available, I think, only from us at this point. But
yeah, it's on the Darwin website. Thank you very much because I have not featured that, but having somebody else do it for me so I don't have to feel embarrassed is a beautiful blessing. Thank you.
More than happy to plug a homie.
Yeah. All right, listeners, please check out the Ardent. It is so beautiful. You can get it from Field Mouse Press. This has been a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.